Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai, Barak, Warapah, Wakazak, to the apostles, elders, and the brothers that are scattered throughout the four corners. Shalom. I'm coming to you with another lesson, and I wanted to talk about Deuteronomy 28 and 64. And because there's a video out there of a Nigerian brother speaking about how guys who call themselves Israelites here in the States are like proud and think that they're the only Jews in the world, which is true. And he's talking about like you guys like One West and some of them different camps out there who think that the gathering of the tribes is just gonna be from here, from North Central and South America or something. I mean, you guys are like off your rocker. Here at GMS, we know that Israel is scattered among all the nations. We know that there's Israelites that's still in Africa to this day. There's Israelites that's out there in Rome to this day. There's Israelites that's out there in Turkey, that's out in India, that's out in Russia still to this day, that's out there in the Czech Republic to this day. But a lot of you closed-minded niggas, I mean, are you actually really reading the scriptures and what the scriptures entail? Are you really checking what the scripture is really saying? Are you really even checking history out? I'm going to read this again. I'm going to read this scripture right here, Deuteronomy 28 and 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing eyes and sorrow of mind. Why did the Lord bring this upon us, and why was the Lord going to do this to us? Scatter us among all these nations. Let me scroll up to the 15th verse. As a matter of fact, let me start at 1. Deuteronomy 28 and 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe and do all his commandments which I command thee this day, Moses speaking, that the Lord thy power will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Verse 2, and all these blessings shall come upon thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord. So we were given a choice. If we would listen and hearken, then from basically verse 3 on down to the 14th verse, those are all the blessings that will come upon us. Now, the flip side is if we didn't listen, Deuteronomy 28 and 15, this is the flip side of us not listening. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So these curses start from Deuteronomy 28:16 on down to Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And where my focus is at is Deuteronomy 28:64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. Do you guys really understand that? The Lord said we're going to be scattered from one end of the earth to another end of the earth. Now, I'm going to play the video with this, it's about a 4-minute video with this Nigerian brother speaking, and saying the things that he's saying about you Israelites here in the U.S. Okay, this is mainly for like you ISUPK guys, because you guys, if a dude is an Israelite, if a dude is from the Congo or from sub-Saharan Africa or somewhere like that, you wouldn't accept them. Israel was scattered, man. You got to read the history, man. Israel was scattered all over the continent of Africa and parts abroad. Before 70 AD and after 70 AD. Israel was in all these different regions. I'm gonna read the history on that, but I'm gonna play this video and go from there. So let me blow it up and let me hit play. I'm gonna just let it play and probably stop it.
Yahweh, Bahashan, Yahweh Shai. My name is Lucky. I'm from West Africa, Nigeria. I'm from Edo State. And my message today is for you guys, Black American Hebrew Israelites. Okay, like I said earlier on that I'm from Edo State. Edo State means people that are fleeing, like fleeing. F-L-E-E-I-N-G, fleeing. Apparently something happened on long time ago, maybe thousands, hundreds or thousands of years ago. People from Edo, Igbo, they all fled from the Middle East. They came down to West Africa. They all settled down there. 100 miles from Edo State, where I'm from, there's a tribe called Igbo, I-B-O, which means Hebrew, H-E-B-R-E-W, Hebrew Israelites. Up to now, they have the same culture as their forefather. 600 miles from the city from the city of Igbo, there is a country called Cameroon. It's located West Africa too. And the capital of Cameroon is called Yahuda, which means the people of Judah. It's been called Yahuda for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, long time ago.
Now, I just stopped it here because he said that there's a kingdom in Cameroon called Yahuda. Now, there's a kingdom, if he's talking, if this is the same place, I believe it's called, let me go here to Google real quick. And I believe it's the same place. I think it's called the Kingdom of Wahida. Let me see if I get the name right. Let me see. Owida. Kingdom of Wahida, or Owida, another way of saying Judah. I think this is the place that he's talking about. It says here, images of Wahida, Africa. Okay, so let me blow this up. Judah. See that? Wida, Slave Coast. Wida, Judah, right? Gold Coast, right? Let's get another picture of the Kingdom of Wahida. Here's another picture of the Kingdom of Wahida right here. Let's get another picture over here. Coronation of the King of Wahida. See this coronation of the King of Wahida. April 1725. I can't really get the name there, but it says coronation of the King of Wahida, April 1725. I can't make that out right there. But just to show you about what this brother is talking about. That's over there in West Africa. Here's another picture. This is a smaller picture. What I'll do is these particular pictures, I'm going to take them and I'll blow them up there and make them bigger so that way you can see them on the screen in post-production. But this is just showing you that Israel, we was all throughout Africa, and even he's going to speak about regions abroad. Let me blow this back up and let him finish.
Now, people know that those people that live there, they are Judah. And the reason I'm saying this is because most Hebrew Israelites in America, they think they are the only Hebrew Israelites. And to really be honest, they have more Hebrew Israelites in Africa than you guys have it in America.
He's right about that.
And like American thinking they are more superior, they are the true Hebrew Israelites. Hebrew Israelites, they are all scattered all over the world.
Point. That's the point.
They have them in Africa, a lot of them in Africa. They have them in India. They have them in Russia, Kazakhstan, where I presently live. I live in Almaty, Kazakhstan now. Almaty, Kazakhstan, former Soviet Union, Russia. I live there now. They have Hebrew Israelites here. Actually, I've met one of them, Hebrew Israelites. They have Hebrew Israelites all over the world. Like American, just humble yourself. Just humble yourself. Calling African people your enemy. Yeah,
See now, he's a little confused with that because as well as far as us in GMS, we talking about the actual Hamites are our enemy. We ain't talking about the Israelites that's there in West Africa and scattered throughout Africa abroad. Because number one, for instance, when you go into Babylon to Timbuktu, right? Babylon to Timbuktu, page 84, right? It says, in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem in 70 AD, and General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves, right? And that's the truth. That was 70 AD when this happened. This was 70 AD, right? Now, even in the whack conscious community, and one of their master teachers, which is Dr. Hendrik Clark, if I'm pronouncing his name right, I think it's Dr. Hendrik Clark. He did a video. I think it's called uh, uh, "What Is or Who Is a Jew?" I think is the name of the video. And at about the 16-minute mark, he speaks about and says that you see a migration pattern in 70 AD of Jews going to West Africa.
Now, after the Romans destroyed the last temple of the people of the Hebrew faith, 70 AD, now you got to watch it. You've got to study the migration patterns of the world. Where did those Western Asian people go? I see no migration pattern that took them into Europe. I do see a migration pattern that took a large number of them into inner West Africa, where a large number of people of the Hebrew faith lived in ancient Ghana, lived in peace.
Now, this is Dr. Hendrik Clark. He's one of your so-called master teachers of that whack conscious community, as well as Ben Yayakum, Chick Anajop, Ben Yayakum, Dr. Hendrik Clark, just to name a few. But he spoke about that, Dr. Hendrik Clark. And matter of fact, you'll see that in the clip where he's going to mention that. So I read this history from Babylon to Timbuktu, which this is a great book, by the way. The information that's in this book by Rudolph R. Windsor, this is solid. This is great information. A lot of people especially them niggas in the whack conscious community, they hate the fact that we always bring out the book Babylon the Timbuktu. The information in here is solid and valid. You can cross-reference this information anywhere, and the information is right and exact. Now, there's another book I'm gonna read. It's called Ancient Civilization by Hutton Weber, right? And you can purchase this book on Amazon. You could probably get it for 50 cents, $3.99 shipping and handling, because people don't value information. It's called Ancient Civilization by Hutton Weber. Webster, excuse me, Hutton Webster. Um, Page 422, right? Page 422, the heading at the top of the page says the early empire. Matter of fact, I'm going to go to page 421 and just read the heading. It says the Flavian Caesars, 69 to 96 AD. Now, I'm going to go to page 422. It says, during Vespasian's reign, a Jewish revolt was crushed in Jerusalem after a terrible siege of 6 months was captured by the emperor's son Titus, which we read that in Babylon and Timbuktu. Titus and Vespasian put an end to the Jewish state. And read it again. During Vespasian's reign, a Jewish revolt was crushed in Jerusalem after a terrible siege of 6 months was captured by the emperor's son Titus. It is said that 1 million Jews perished during the siege and that 100,000 were sold into slavery. They were sold into slavery in Rome after the siege. There was millions of Israelites. There was millions of Israelites back there. So a million. They're saying a million. He's saying 1 million Israelites were killed and 100,000 were captured and sold into slavery into Rome. Now this is some history. This is history outside of the Bible, as well as the book Babylon the Timbuktu. But it's talking about how the siege came on Jerusalem in 70 AD. And then when that siege came, 1 million Jews fled into Africa. 100,000 were sold into slave markets in Rome. 1 million were killed during the siege. But now the rest of the Israelites that were left, 1 million fled into Africa, but millions spread out in all other directions. Everybody didn't run into Africa, but I'm just dealing with the ones that went into Africa. Now, I'm going to keep reading, and I'm going to go back to Babylon and Timbuktu, right? And I'm going to read, just going to read down a little bit. It says here, page 85. It says, there was a period of over 600 years between Zephaniah and Philo, and considering the new waves of immigrants coming into Africa, they had 600 years to penetrate toward all the borders of Ethiopia. E. Shurer wrote that Hebrewism was detectable by its inscriptions from the Egyptian border westward across North Africa and Mauritania. Right? That's what this particular scholar named E. Shurer wrote. Right? And that's on North Africa, by the way. A.H. Goodby says, Jerome, 340 to 420 AD, one of the four doctors of the church, wrote that the Jews were spread from the western extremity of Mauritania to India. Now, ancient Mauritania included part of the territory on the Atlantic Ocean, Morocco, and part of modern Algeria. It is certain that the Jews had migrated all across North Africa by the 2nd century, and some scholars fixed the date earlier than this, right? So that's showing you after 70 AD, we were all over Africa. We ain't just going to West Africa. We were up there in Northern Africa, Mauritania. The map, you'll see in post-production, the map will be popped up on the screen so you can look and see all over there in Africa. Mauritania, that's up there in the north. So we was all through that. We was all through that place, man. So you dudes, man, you gotta go back and do some reading or something, man. You guys out there that call yourselves Israelites. The deliverance ain't just gonna be here in North America, my man. So my man here on the screen, the Nigerian brother, he's kind of pissed off. He got every right to be pissed off with that because we're the Israelites that's over here in America are not the only ones, are not the only Jews on the planet. Jake is all over. We just talking Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. I'm not even talking about the 10 tribes. I'm talking about Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. The ones that were in Jerusalem in 70 AD when Titus and Vespasian came and decimated and burned down the second temple, and then Israel, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi fled in all directions. Now I'm gonna read some more history, page 86 here in Babylon to Timbuktu. Um, Now this is talking about another Jewish revolt that took place in I'm gonna start page 85. It says under Roman suzerainty and power, the Jews of Asia and North Africa rebelled AD 115. So in 115 AD, the Israelites or the Jews that fled into North Africa and that fled into Asia, because we was in Asia too. If you read the Acts the second chapter, it tells you that there was Israelites that was Jews that was in Asia. Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. That's before 70 AD, by the way. And Acts the second chapter, it speaks about that. Matter of fact, let me pull that up real quick. Let me just pull that up. Acts. This, by the way, is before 70 AD. Acts the second chapter. Okay. Acts 2 and 5. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not these which speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? Parthians and Medes and Elamites, and the dwellers in Mesopotamia. Elam, by the way, that's India. Okay? Elam are the East Indians. Mesopotamia and in Judea and Cappadocia and Pontus and Asia. Right? Tells you right there. And Asia. Right? So Israelites or Jews was in Asia before 70 AD. And they came from Asia to Jerusalem to keep the feast. This is before 70 AD. What I'm reading about in the history, this is after 70 AD. So let me go back. Now let me go back here into the history. This is Babylon and Timbuktu, by the way, page 85. Under Roman suzerainty, the power of the Jews of Asia and North Africa rebelled AD 115. The Jews considered themselves numerous enough to challenge Roman authority in the east and the south. Because of their numbers, the Jews almost subdued their adversaries, who had compelled them to suffer many atrocities and indignities. Emperor Trajan sent his general Turbo to bring law and order. Instead of bringing law and order, the act of suppression of the insurrection brought a massacre. The suppression of the rebellion under the slogan of law and order may be good in principle, but a good thing may be carried too far. So it was in this case the pagans and the Romans attacked the Jews indiscriminately, both the Jewish soldiers and the uninvolved peaceful population, without mercy. So it wasn't just soldiers attacked, it was men, it was old men, old women, pregnant women, little children, newborn babies were all attacked by these fucking Roman bastards. This is after 70 AD, by the way. As a result of this merciless attack, many Jews fled to those parts of northwest Africa known as Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Mauritania. Many other Jews fled to the areas where Rome did not have any jurisdiction. So this is after 70 AD. This is like maybe 50 some odd years after 70 AD. The Romans under Trajan had crushed a revolt of Israelites or Jews that were in Asia and North Africa. That's after 70 AD. We was all over that place, man. We were all over, man. You guys need to go do some damn research, man. It says many other Jews fled to the areas where Rome did not have any jurisdiction. This was to the region of the south, the Sahara Desert, and the Sudan. So in the Sahara Desert and even over in the Sudan, right? Which we know that those Sudanese are the descendants are the actual ancient Egyptians. Israelites was in the Sahara and in the Sudan. So we was all over Africa, man. You dudes got to go research some history, man. It says, Grazel says, such is the explanation of how the Sahara Desert first acquired Jewish tribes toughened by a fighting tradition and possessed of physical characteristics which it is said still make them approximate very closely to the original Jewish population of Palestine, because they were of the original Jewish population of Palestine, because they ran from the Romans from Palestine into Africa. 70 AD. The Jews are an omnipresent people. They seem to exist everywhere. At the beginning of the 6th century, they are found in Spain before the Mohammedan conquest. So we was up in Spain. This is before Islam and before Muhammad even came on the scene. We were in Spain and in Portugal in them areas. This is the 6th century. And this is before Muhammad came up, came up and started that Islamic bullshit, which that was started by the church fathers that were Israelites anyway, but that's another story within itself. I'm going to read it again. The Jews are an omnipresent people. They seem to exist everywhere. At the beginning of the 6th century, they are found in Spain before the Mohammedan conquest. Spain is known to the Jews as the classical land of crypto-Judaism because they feigned Christianity but practiced Jewish ritual in secret, right? These were Israelites that they didn't believe in the Messiah. So they were what? They went strictly by the law. They kept the law. They didn't believe in the Messiah. So you always had that dynamic going on, even as right now. We're here, we're on YouTube, we do videos. They call us messianic Jews. And then you got those different guys out there like Zion Lex and Nazi and different people that are they deal strictly with the law. They go back with the law. They don't believe in the Messiah. Funny thing about it, some of them guys don't even have beards on their face, but they talking about that they Jews and that they keeping the law. But some of them guys, they lined up and they ain't even got a beard on their face. But I'm gonna go back here. It says, as early as the Roman period, the Jews of Spain had been large in number and influential. Many of them claimed to be descendants of the noble Jews in Jerusalem who had been carried into exile by General Titus. It says, after the Visigoth invasion, the situation ameliorated for the Jews because the Visigoths adopted the Arian form of Christianity and they favored the Jews. However, when they converted to Catholicism, they became zealous. Okay, let me just keep reading. It's not going to be that much longer. It says they became zealous like any other neophytes, so on and so forth. Let me skip down to the point. In the 7th century, the Jews were threatened with the penalty of slavery if they were found practicing Judaism. This cruel policy caused many Jews to flee to the Mediterranean and the western coast of Africa. The southernmost point of Spain, after you cross the sea, leads you to the northern or the western coast of Africa. Throughout the Middle Ages, many European governments expelled their Jews. These black Jews migrated to neighboring countries, Turkey and Africa, going far out east. So that was just a little history, and I'm going to read some more history on that. I'm going to play this video a little bit more, read some more history, and then I got some scriptures for you. But that's just showing you that we weren't just in West Africa. I'm telling you there that we was in Asia. We was in Spain. We were out in Turkey. And that's in the 7th century AD. That was the time of the Crusades right there. So from 70 AD to the 7th century AD is about a 630 years in between. And we were in all them different regions. We were all over Africa, as I read in Babylon to Timbuktu. We were in the Sahara and in the Sudan. So we was all over that. We was all over that place, Africa. So let me just play some more of this video right here.
It's a lot of Hebrew Israelites in Africa. Calling the rest of the world your enemy. There is a lot of Hebrew Israelites scattered all over the world.
Now wait a minute. When he's saying calling, because he's kind of being emotional, but the rest of the world is our enemy. Now, if he's watching a video like ISUPK or somebody, of course they're gonna say like them people that's over there in the Congo, in the Sudan, and this and that, them ain't Israelites. But you have Israelites among the actual Hamites in the Sudan, among the actual Hamites in the Congo's a part of West Africa, by the way. So it's actual Israelites over there. In Mauritania and northern part of Africa, we was always sitting up in there. There's nothing but Israel up there. So you guys, you gotta go back and do some more research. As a matter of fact, let me hit a scripture. Let me bring this down, and let me go back to Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28, and I'm gonna go to the okay, 28, and I'm gonna go to the 25th verse. Deuteronomy 28 and 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. We were removed into all the kingdoms of the earth, but I'm focusing on our migration into West Africa as of 70 AD and beyond. Excuse me. I need to get some water. But 70 AD and beyond, us being in West Africa and all throughout different parts of Africa. Before 70 AD, we was in Asia, and we were in Egypt, that's North Africa. After 70 AD, we were in North Africa, Mauritania. We were in the Sahara, in the Sudan, out in Turkey, going into the 6th century and the 7th century AD. So I'm going to read this again. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them. And thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. All right? That's the point. So now let me go back to the video, because it's only like a barely 4-minute video. Blow it up again.
Humble yourself. And some of those people, they've been woke up to the truth way before you black American know that you are Hebrew Israelite. Igbo people know hundreds, thousands years ago that they are the true Hebrew Israelite before you black American even know what Hebrew Israelite is. Humble yourself. Humble yourself. Humble
Beautiful.
yourself. Hebrew Israelites are all over the world. Shalom.
So now, he said right there, look, Israelites are all over the world, or Judah is all over, the kingdom of Judah is all over the world. All right, Israel is all over the world, and that's what he was saying there in the video. So now let me go back to some history now. Let me go back to some history, and again, I showed you a clip of Dr. Hendrik Clark speaking about after 70 A.D. how you had a migration of Jews that went into West Africa.
Now, after the Romans destroyed the last temple of the people of the Hebrew faith, 70 A.D., now you got to watch it. You've got to study the migration patterns of the world. Where did those Western Asian people go? I see no migration pattern that took them into Europe. I do see a migration pattern that took a large number of them into inner West Africa, where a large number of people of the Hebrew faith lived in ancient Ghana, lived in peace.
Okay, but we weren't just in West Africa. Now, matter of fact, let me get another scripture. I'm gonna read. I'm gonna get Leviticus 26 and 17. Right? Hey, because the Lord is the one that did this to us. The Lord is the one who scattered us among all these different nations. Leviticus 26 and 17. Okay. And I will set my face against you, and ye shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you, and ye shall flee when none pursueth you. See, the Lord is the one who did this to us. Jeremiah 15 and 4. Jeremiah 15. Jeremiah 15 and 4. And I will cause them to be removed into all kingdoms of the earth because of Manasseh the son of Hezekiah, king of Judah, for that which he did in Jerusalem. This is dealing with during the time of Manasseh the son of Hezekiah. And the Lord, and I will cause them to be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. That's the point. The Lord caused us to be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. We didn't just go into West Africa, and then from West Africa we came to America in slavery, and then the deliverance is just only going to come from here, from basically North, Central, and South America. We are all over the world, scattered among all the kingdoms of the world. Matter of fact, I gotta get one of my favorite scriptures again. James 1 and 1. Again. James 1 and 1. James, a servant of the Most High and the Lord Yahushai, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. Let me read it again. James, a servant of the Most High and of the Lord Yahushai, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. Okay? So you Israelites with them thick ass skulls, man, you got to get that through you. You got to get that in your head, man. So now I'm gonna go back into reading some history. I got some history here in a book called now this is after 70 AD. This is actually dealing with the transatlantic slave trade. So now we going way beyond 70 AD, and we come into the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm gonna try to get through this quick. I wasn't trying to make this video be too long because I know Jake doesn't have a real long attention span. So let me just hit the points. It says chapter 1. This book is called Slavery in the Arab World by Murray Gordon. Slavery in the Arab World by Murray Gordon. And for a lot of you simple ass niggas that want to call yourself Muslims, Okay, the Muslims were the major middlemen, and them damn Africans were major fucking middlemen in putting you on them slave ships and bringing you here to the Americas. But not only that, trafficking you eastward through Africa into the Sudan and into India among Elam and out to Turkey to the Ottoman Empire. I'm going to read that up in here, which goes with when the scripture I read earlier that we are going to be scattered among all nations. Deuteronomy 28 and 64, James 1 and 1, Deuteronomy 28 and 25 that I had read earlier. 28 and 25, and I will bring the sword upon you. No, that's Deuteronomy 28 and 25. I'll read that again. Let me read the history. It says slavery concealed in the midst of time. It is a curious twist to the study of the slave trade. The historians have conducted their inquiries into this nefarious traffic from the perspectives of the Americas and the sugar islands of the Caribbean. Almost irresistibly, their attention has been drawn to the transatlantic trade, which from the middle of the 15th century down to the third quarter of the 1800s brought an estimated 10 million blacks across the Atlantic Ocean to work the plantations and mines of the New World here in America. It was this traffic in blacks from Africa's west coast, initiated by the Portuguese in 1441, that provided the labor that fueled the rapid economic development of Brazil and the old American South. So a lot of the slaves, more than half of them went to Brazil. Of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi from the west coast of Africa went to Brazil. The rest came to the mainland and went throughout the islands in the Caribbean. It says it made possible the growth of the plantations in Jamaica, Barbados, Hispaniola, which is the Dominican Republic and Haiti, St. Lucia, and the other islands in the Caribbean where sugar fortunes grew. As the trade in each succeeding year bounded forward, and as the economic stakes in service, manufacturing, and shipping industries which were dependent upon the trade multiplied, competition among the key across notably Portugal, England, France, Spain, and the United Provinces for a share of the business intensified. Let me skip down. Innocent victims of a system they could not begin to comprehend, these misfortunates were either seized in early dawn attacks on villages by raiding parties or sold by avaricious African middlemen and then marched in fetters to the coast where they were bartered for the white man's artifacts. The ships were waiting offshore for their human cargo, had brought an assortment of goods from New England and the West Indies that included cloth, glass, beads, knives, and brassware, rum, and firearms. African human capital was exchanged for Western consumer goods. Actually, these were the items in great demand by local chiefs and against which captured blacks were exchanged. The Europeans were eager to ply the black chiefs with rum so as to make them more pliable in bartering slaves for their artifacts. The guns emboldened them to resort to greater violence in searching out unsuspecting victims, thereby increasing the supply of slaves to meet the growing demand. It says usually the Negroes were stored as so much merchandise in one of 40 or so factories or trading posts that Europeans began building in the late 15th century for the purpose of promoting trade. The most famous and enduring of these trading posts was Elmina, the mine which King John II of Portugal ordered built in 1482. Let me skip down. During the latter part of the 16th century, The transatlantic slave trade rapidly escalated, supplying labor to the Portuguese plantations and mines in Brazil and to the Spanish plantations in the Caribbean. So now this is the transatlantic slave trade, and these are all the things that was going on in the different places that we were being sold for what? For guns, for rum, for knives and trinkets that they made here in New England, and they brought out there and used it as a bartering thing between what the African middlemen and the goddamn Arabs. The Arabs were them African middlemen, which were straight up Hamites, which weren't Israelites, because I read about the history of Israel fleeing in 70 AD into West Africa. Showed you clips of Hendrik Clark speaking about Israel going into West Africa. Read history about Israel being in Asia and in North Africa, rebelling against the Romans in 115 AD, and then Trajan crushing that. So Israel, we went all over. Judah, Benjamin, Levi, after 70 AD, went all over. And these are some of the places that we ended up in. So now, let me skip through so I can get through this. Page 4. It says slavery in the Arab world. Yet, centuries before the first ship flying the flag of European countries slipped out from one of the numerous inlets along Africa's west coast. West coast, by the way, where the Israelites were, laden with human cargo. The peoples of North Africa, Arabia, and the Persian Gulf were forcibly transferring large numbers of blacks down the Nile to Egypt and across the network of the vast Sahara trade routes from West and Central Africa to the countries of Maghreb, and decades after the last slave ship sailed westward to the Americas and the West Indies. So decades after so-called slavery was abolished, Israelites or Jews was being trafficked in Egypt, down through the Sahara trade routes into West and Central Africa and countries of the Maghreb. Again, it says decades after the last slave ship sailed westward to the Americas and the West Indies, where slavery had been abolished by the early 1870s. It says Arab adhows were furtively moving out of Zanzibar, Mombasa, and other East African ports, following the familiar Indian Ocean routes for the consignment of ebony. The masters of these fast, laden rigging ships, which were methodically packed in sardine-like fashion, with men, women, and children, maneuvered skillfully in evading the small force of British sloops charged with the impossible mission of interdicting this illicit traffic. The blacks caught up in this trade were fated to be sold in the slave marts of Arabia, the Persian Gulf, the Ottoman Empire, and India, right? So after slavery was so-called abolished in the 1700s, the Arabs, which were in Zanzibar, Mombasa, and other East, now this is East Africa, okay? They traffic us from West Africa through the Saharan trade routes into Central Africa onto East Africa to be what? Sent out into the Arab world, into the Ottoman Empire. Far as east as the Ottoman Empire is where, which was once called Constantinople, is now called Turkey. So this is after so-called slavery was abolished here in the Americas. Now the scripture says here, I'm going to read this again. Deuteronomy 28 and 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. We were removed into all kingdoms of the earth. Now let me go down to the Deuteronomy 28 and 64 again. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods which thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And that's talking about the transatlantic slave trade coming here to the Americas. Coming here to the Americas. But we weren't only brought here to North America. Okay, the bulk of us came over this way. After slavery was abolished here in the United States, I'm going to read it again here in the history. Page 4. Read it again. It says, Africa's west coast laden with human cargo. The people of North Africa, Arabia, and the Persian Gulf were forcibly transferring large numbers of blacks down the Nile to Egypt and across the network of vast Sahara trade routes from West and Central Africa to the countries of the Maghreb, and decades after the last slave ship sailed westward to the Americas and the West Indies, where slavery had been abolished by the early 1870s. Then it's saying that the Arabs, the Arabs were furtively moving out of Zanzibar, Mombasa, and other East African ports, following the familiar Indian Ocean routes for the consignment of ebony. The ebony is talking about us. Okay? It says the blacks caught up in this trade were fated to be sold in the slave marts of Arabia, the Persian Gulf, the Ottoman Empire, and India. Relatively little has been written about this fact of the slave trade, although the number of blacks who fell victim to Muslim slave traders can never be determined. You can never get a number out of that. With the cargo slave ships, they kept a record of their bounty, of how many slaves they brought in and packed in like sardines. Like again, it says here in Deuteronomy 28 and 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. We walked out of Egypt, and then we walked back into Egypt during the time of the Ptolemaic Empire. Israelites were working for the Ptolemies in North Africa there in Egypt during the time of the Greek reign. So we walked back into there. This is talking about the Lord was going to bring us into Egypt again, meaning bondage again with ships, cargo slave ships. By the whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, which is Quaker English, meaning no man shall save you. That happened. So again, you guys who call yourself Israelites, man, look, you got to go out there and do some research, man. You got to go out there and do some research, because we didn't just come to the Americas. All right, we was trafficked all throughout Africa, and before the slave trade even began, we were mingled all through Africa. All right, we were mingled all through there before the slave trade began. Going back to the time of the Crusades, and before the Crusades, we were up there in Spain and Portugal and in Mauritania. Okay, let me read a little bit more, and then I'm gonna conclude this. It says, there is little doubt that the figures ran to several millions over the centuries that the traffic was carried on between 1770 and the end of the 19th century, the period about which most is known about the Indian Ocean traffic. It has been estimated that approximately 1.25 million blacks were shipped to Africa's east coast, which is Kenya and Tanganyika, which this is the African east coast. And this is after slavery was abolished in the 1870s or whatever here in the United States, the transatlantic slave trade. This is going eastward across Africa. That these Arabs, so for you niggas who want to call yourself Muslims, it says, I'm going to read it again. It has been estimated that approximately 1.25 million blacks were shipped to Africa's east coast, Kenya, and Tanganyika, if I'm pronouncing it right. Slightly less than half this number were exported to destinations outside Africa, with the balance accounted for by the proliferating demand by plantation owners on the coast. Africa, I'm skipping down. Africa was exporting its human capital through other routes as well. Uncounted thousands were shipped across the Sahara to Barbary, down the Nile to Egypt, and from ports on the Red Sea to Arabia. Many were sold as slaves in these countries, and untold others were resold to traders who transported them to Turkey, Syria, the Persian Gulf region, and as far east as India. Okay? So that's pretty much it on that, showing that we were scattered around the world. We didn't just 70 AD run into West Africa, then be brought here to America, and that's that. Deuteronomy 28:64 again. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And again, our deliverance is not just going to be from here uh, in the Americas, North, Central, and South America. Israelites are going to be delivered from all over the world. As a matter of fact, Israelites, Yahweh Shai is not just going to come here to North America, grab us something, and that's it, it's over with. No. The scriptures say this in Isaiah. Let me get Isaiah, the 45th chapter. Isaiah. Let me see. Isaiah 45. Scriptures say this. Isaiah 45, I'm going to start at 3. No, I'm looking for, it's Isaiah 43, I'm sorry. Bear with me one moment. Isaiah 43. Isaiah 43 and 3. For I am the Lord thy power, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. I gave Egypt for thy ransom, Ethiopia and Seba for thee. Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore will I give men for thee, and people for thy life. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy seed from the east. Did I not read that Israelites was trafficked as far east as going into the Ottoman Empire, which today is called Turkey. It was once called Constantinople. And gather thee from the west. We ain't just going to be gathered. The Lord said he's going to gather us from the east, and then he's going to come gather us in the west. So he's going to start in the east, and he's going to come to the west to gather us out of here with the chariots, no doubt. The UFOs, what the so-called white man calls UFOs. The Lord is going to gather us. I'm going to read it again, Isaiah 43 and 5. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy seed from the east and gather thee from the west. Okay? So Israel's not just going to be gathered from North, Central, and South America, and then that's it. It's over with. No. We're going to be gathered from the four corners of the earth, from east to west. I got another scripture, Isaiah 31. Let me see, Isaiah 31. Isaiah 31, I'm going to start at 4. Isaiah 31 and 4. For thus saith the Lord power, spoken unto me, like as the lion and the young lion roaring on his prey. When a multitude of shepherds is called forth against him, he will not be afraid of their voice, nor abase himself for the noise of them. So shall the Lord of hosts come down to fight for Mount Zion and for the hill thereof. So the Lord is going to come down to fight for us. As birds flying, this is talking about the chariots. As birds flying, so will the Lord of hosts defend Jerusalem. Defending also, he will deliver it, and passing over, he will preserve it. Okay? So I hope you brothers learn something. This is mainly for those niggas out there that call themselves Israelites that are blind to the fact that we were all throughout Africa before the slave trade, before 70 AD, after 70 AD, in the Middle Ages, 600 AD, the 6th century, the 7th century AD, we were all throughout there. the slave trade, and after the slave trade. I'm going to read this again. Isaiah 31 and 5. As birds flying, so will the Lord of hosts defend Jerusalem. Defending also he will deliver it, and passing over he will preserve it. As birds flying in formation, like how birds they come and they fly in formation, like a V-type formation, as birds flying. So with that, I'm going to say shalom, and I hope you brothers learned something off of this lesson.